Oh no, I was walking in the rain, but then this is from the dam, isn't it?
I know, isn't that the worst?
I could send it to you.
Whether
Yeah, right. It was nice.
our bodies have had no chance to catch up with the heat, like no chance to acclimate.
Until you're like, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have a headache and like I'm fatigued. And you're like, oh, it's because I only drank a normal amount of water today instead of a super normal. Yeah. No, I agree.
Trees and
I have like a beverage plan, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have this, I'm gonna have my,
Beer,
you know, hydration,
fan perhaps.
electrolytes. Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yes, I've been trying. They're so gross. They're so gross.
I tried one that was lemonade, strawberry lemonade.
Accept it, and then
In the liquid IV.
What I'm curious about.
I like the orange creamsicle.
Right?
But I've switched over to the sugar-free one. So I like the raspberry lemonade sugar-free one and the.
I swear, that's
I
the
get
last
the
of
packet and
These
just
are
put it
great.
in, and it was
I don't think we
strawberry.
have any of these,
And I
and
got it
I
at
keep a
Costco.
little
Very good.
collection of things we have.
Good evening. I call this work session of the Greenbelt City Council to order. My name's Emmett Jordan. I serve as mayor. Council, will you introduce yourselves, please?
Kristen Weaver, Mayor Pro Tem.
Danielle McKinney, council member.
Jenny Pompey, council member.
Frankie Fritz, council member.
Amy Niesel, council member.
Silky Pope, council member.
Okay, I know Mr. Summeron had two information items. Are there other information items? I got one? Okay.
You got the little one.
So council holds work sessions on Mondays and Wednesdays several times a month to exchange information with community stakeholders or to gather information from staff, advisory boards, or residents. No votes or formal actions are taken during our work sessions. Tonight's session is open to the public, as are all council gatherings, except for executive sessions as authorized by state law. Residents can observe our deliberations, and we will pause periodically to provide opportunities for the public to comment. If you wish to speak during those designated comment periods, if you're here in the room, just raise your hand. After being recognized, you need to go over to the podium, and you'll need to state your name and to provide an address for the record. If you are using Zoom, you can use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen to submit a written question, or once again, you can raise your virtual hand, and after being recognized, you will need to provide a name and an address. We don't accept anonymous comments coming in online. And finally, if you're watching remotely on cable TV, on Zoom, on Facebook, just send us an email. That's the best thing. The email address is questions@greenbeltmd.gov. Please, during those public comment times, the time limit, 3 minutes, please stay on topic, the topic that's under consideration. We ask you to remain civil and refrain from disparaging others or questioning motives. So tonight, we've got two primary items on the agenda. There's a presentation and discussion on the final draft, I guess it is, or the almost final draft, the Historic Greenbelt Cemeteries Master Preservation Plan. And later, we're going to discuss a bit about the process that we used during the budget hearings this year, and talk a little bit about what worked and what didn't work so well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. But first, I want to acknowledge City Manager Josue Samaron. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Good evening, guests and residents.
Okay, and I see that we are joined by Megan Searing Young, our museum director. Megan, do you want to just say a couple of words about this process and introduce the contractor? Also, Jamie Fear, who is our acting director of planning and community development, are here. Megan? Yeah. I don't think it is on.
Again, so the lights off.
Now I can speak. Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you so much, Council and everyone for being here and for planning this work session. We have been, this has been a long time in the making. There's been concern for many years about the condition of the cemeteries and that they are requiring attention and some kind of comprehensive plan, both to sort of get them to a place where they can be safely visited by residents and researchers and genealogists, and then also a plan going forward for how to handle their care. So I guess it was about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, I worked with the former director of planning, Terry Ruby, to write up an RFP to bring on a consultant, and we reviewed several different consulting firms and ended up with going with this firm, which is JMT. And so there's been a lot of research done, and this is our, I believe, third meeting in this process. So we're excited to have you all hear this plan. There's been a lot of citizen input, a lot of additional research that's gone into it, and so I think this will give us a good sort of playbook going forward. This project has been paid for through a grant from Maryland Historical Trust and Maryland Heritage Areas Authority.
Okay, thank you so much. So, as Megan was saying, the city, we're the caretaker for 3 late 18th century historic sites, Hamilton, Turner, and Walker Cemetery. They're legally protected landmarks and active resources for Greenbelt National Historic Landmark District. So the plan's intended to give us a clear roadmap to stabilize and secure these spaces. So at this time, I want to introduce our consultant from JMT. Welcome. It's so nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again for having me here. My name's Carolyn Gimble. I'm a senior architectural historian at Johnson, Meermarin and Thompson, or JMT, much less of a mouthful. You kind of alluded to it earlier, but I currently consider the plan to be at a kind of 95% complete stage. Been working for a few months, having both public meetings, and we've had one other city council work session specifically about this plan, where I introduced the concept of the preservation plan and sort of like action steps and items, a roadmap, if you will, to take to preserve these places. So what I've delivered last week that should have been posted online for people to take a look at was the plan in its current form, and also a comment matrix of the comments I've gotten and addressed so far. There's over 100 comments from various people, both professionals, Greenbelt residents, city council. All of that is compiled into the same place. I suppose, I'm sure you have an agenda tonight, but I have a few kind of touch point updates that I would like to highlight about the plan, but I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Okay, very good. So, and we have the document, we can put it up on the screen. So, do you want to talk just a little bit about, I don't know how you have your comments organized, but perhaps you can just talk a little bit about the historical context of these cemeteries, or,
Sure. So there's 3 separate sites associated with 3 families that were part of the Greenbelt area's early history. This area, if you look at older maps from the 18th century, you see it referred to as the Vansville district most commonly. Greenbelt, as we all know, was a newly acquired name in the 1930s. But basically from this early occupation of this area, these cemeteries are all we have left of those histories. Through research, we found that each place contains both the remains of the white families that were there and likely the burials of the people who were enslaved at these properties. They were all used for agriculture, most likely tobacco plantations. The main update I've accrued a lot of comments in describing these histories. There's a lot of really brilliant local historians, and I myself am not from Greenbelt, not from this area, so I tend to defer a lot to the local experts when forming documents like this.
got some really great townhouses, you know, if you decide to.
I'll think about it. I did spend my afternoon here. I got here a little earlier before the meeting, and I was like, could be nice. But as far as the flow of the document, about a year ago, we did kind of a site survey of each of the cemeteries to document existing conditions and look at the size and if they're potentially larger than what they are, shown on maps. And then the histories were really informed by things like the census, genealogical research that we did using Ancestry.com resources, archival research, both at the Library of Congress and repositories in Maryland. The main update I feel that I have with this is that I was able to track down where the Turner Family Bible is. For those who aren't familiar with family Bibles, historically they were used to track births, deaths, and marriages within a family. And the Turner Family Bible kept seeing it referenced in every mention of the Turners. The Turners are also, their cemetery is the one that is right next door, kind of technically within the Greenbelt Municipal Cemetery off of Ivy Lane. But I kept seeing reference to the Turner Family Bible being found by federal workers when this land was first acquired to develop into Greenbelt. But then no mention of what they did with the Bibles. I was able to find out that they are in a safe place at the United Methodist Church of Hyattsville, which traces their history back to that location, which was called Wildcat Farm and was also an early Methodist preaching place. So they're very linked with the Methodist history associated with the Turners. But in the Turner Bible, Sarah Turner, matriarch of the family, she logged births, deaths, and marriages in her family. And there's also a page that appears to list births and deaths of enslaved people on the Turner's property from between about 1825 to 1850. That I've included in the document on page 31, if we would like to scroll over to that. I would include a photo of it, but the way that it is stored at the church now, the pages are laminated, so they're clear to read in person, but to photograph them was a bit of a feat. So instead, I transcribed the page. Historically, if you look at kind of older documents describing this page, they say it's a little illegible. I was able to pick out names and definitely the dates of everything in there. I would like to read them out today, if that sounds good to everyone. Basically, Sarah documented 11 births recorded between 1825 and 1850. And these include George, who was born on January 19th, 1825, Charity, who was born August 15th, 1827, Daniel, who was born August 27th, 1834, Mariah, who was born November 25th, 1835. This is where I have a hard time deciphering the names, but it looked like it said Bryhard, who was born March 7th, 1835. After that is Boone, born May 17th, 1837. Harriet, born September 8th, 1839. Hennison, who's born October 16th, 1841. We've got Mandy, who's born September 26, 1844. Jane, who's born February 14th, 1847. And then another Charity, who's born October 10th, 1850. And then Sarah Turner also documented one death of what is presumed on the page to be people enslaved at her property. And that death was Charity, who passed away on October 13th, 1820. So that was really interesting for me to be able to locate that piece of information, and the people at UMC Hyattsville are very nice. So if anyone's listening and interested in researching this topic, they were really great to work with. I'm sure they would be happy to let you also take a look at the Turner Bible.
That is great. You know,
yeah.
it's so fortunate that the church was able to actually hold on to that Bible. And I guess they maybe have a lot of other family Bibles.
Yeah, they have a couple other family Bibles. I didn't take a full look at everything, but they tend to keep records like that, and can often be a good neutral party to hold on to genealogical texts like that.
Hey, of the three cemeteries, which was the oldest?
The oldest, I would have to take a look. They're all really about the same time period. I'd say probably the oldest of them, probably say the Walkers, or technically the Hamiltons. They're all within a few years of each other in like the 1780s or so.
Well, the historical information and the genealogy, just reading through it, it's fascinating material, and to have that gathered together in one place is really helpful to people who are trying to do research on what happened here in the area before the city of Greenbelt. And it's just a very, very interesting read.
Yeah, and I do, while you mentioned the genealogy, I just do want to reiterate that I'm looking at a kind of a tight area of the family's history. I think also since the last city council work session, I've included some family trees within the document that show, I tried to show a generation or two before and after the known burials. So this one, what's shown on the screen is Turner Cemetery. And the only stone remaining, there could have been more in the past, but I haven't been able to find pictures or mention of any others with inscriptions other than Thomas P. Turner, who passed away in 1811, but his family he was like a third generation Marylander. So surely his other older family members were also buried in the same place or elsewhere on their property.
And of the three cemeteries, which had the largest number of internments, not outside of enslaved individuals whose graves may not have been marked?
Yeah, I'd say largest is actually Hamilton, that is the cemetery by the community gardens. That one is also interesting because the headstones were removed in the 1960s, 1970s. Wasn't able to pinpoint an exact date for that, but there used to be a lot of issues with vandalism, and there still are in cemeteries around the country. Fortunately now, in the time that I've spent in all of these places, not really seeing the same signs of vandalism as there might have been in the past, but in an effort to prevent the Hamilton family's headstones from being further damaged, they were all removed, and they were first encased like in an interpretive sign in a like concrete mixture, but that sign started to fail around 2022, so Public Works took it down, and they're now in a secure, packed box at their facility.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that when the stones may have been removed in the 1960s, or that they didn't kind of map things out exactly where things
Yeah.
were found. And also, I guess the Hamilton Place Cemetery perhaps is the most challenged site, just in terms of vandalism. I can't imagine why someone would break a headstone, but just in terms of deterioration and the fact that it's overgrown. I actually was back there on the Rotary Club garden tour just a couple of days ago, and walked right past that area and didn't realize that is actually where the cemetery was located.
Yeah, so that's a big part of the recommendations is for Hamilton Cemetery in particular. Turner and Walker don't have nearly the same issue as even being able to tell that there's a cemetery there. With Hamilton, it's so overgrown, there's no fence at all, that really when we were there in person, we had a hard time surveying it, and a lot of without markers to go off of, a lot of what we were mapping was things like periwinkle growth, which it's an invasive plant, but historically in the 18th century, early 19th century, it was used as a decorative cemetery ground cover. So you often see it growing, and periwinkle is often considered an indicator that there might be burials nearby of a certain age. Yeah, super interesting. A thing that I didn't know before working on this project with the archaeologists that we also have at JMT. But yeah, tons of periwinkle out in the woods. Near there.
Yeah, I'm just curious about
Yeah.
that. Is that because people would have planted it, or does it grow well on the grave sites?
People planted it.
Okay.
Like decoratively, but it's invasive, so then it just.
So then it goes,
just
yeah,
goes.
wow.
Yeah.
There are many instances of things being planted because people thought they were pretty, but being invasive and them going crazy.
South in here, so I know
Yeah.
all about kudzu.
Yes. Another notable
Yes.
example. Yes.
So, looking at the Hamilton Place site, the area in red is the boundaries, but I suspect the cemeteries, all three of them, probably wasn't a neat square, or was it like a neat square? And there's some, with the periwinkle growth, it's not really clear how far it goes back.
Yeah, that is correct. What I am recommending is that at least that square is fenced in for those areas, and that kind of size, we were able to kind of intuit where it was based off of aerial photography. There's some good aerial imagery of this area right before it was developed into Greenbelt, and you can see, I can tell you what page, if you want to pull it up, that has the Hamilton Cemetery map on it, but on that same photo, we're also able to see a house. Yes, it's page 9, I believe.
Yeah, page 9. In the packet. Page 15 of the 120.
Yeah, of the PDF, it's, 14. There you go. So just in the interest of knowing the place, also included some outlines of buildings that were on the site that you can see on the same aerial image that also shows the cemetery. There's also a lot of the descriptions of these places we get from things like wills, and some of them are very specific about the size of things, being like 12 by 12 foot house, something like that. So that also has informed it, the location. And that also informed the wills. I mean, the history of knowing that both at least in terms of the Hamilton family, both the white Hamilton family and people enslaved on the property appear to have shared the same cemetery, or were at least buried very close to each other. And it's a pattern of development we see in other locations around Maryland.
So, with just looking at that first site, the Hamilton site, it's interesting how close the cemetery is to the house where they lived. It really kind of suggests a very, very close-knit
Yeah.
grouping, I suppose. But that's not necessarily the case with the other two sites. I guess the Turner site.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure where the Turner house is, but I am familiar of where the Walker's house used to be. If you want a modern landmark, it's near where the Royal Farms gas station is on the road. It's about 1,500 feet away.
Yeah, that's fenced
Yeah.
in, yeah.
And I know you're working on an interpretive sign for it as well,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not so close to where the cemetery is. The cemetery is kind of up the hill by the spring, really a very beautiful place.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, and I understand people used to picnic there. Can we kind of flip, I don't know what page that's on.
Yeah, I can find that for you. Walker map is on. 35? Yeah, 40 of the PDF. And then, yeah, the numbering is slightly off from the title pages. I apologize.
On the Turner Cemetery, you've got the square, and that's very well defined because it continues to be an active cemetery. And
Yeah.
off to the left are the unmarked graves that were sort of uncovered. You know, there was a cleanup effort, I guess it was about 8 or 9 years ago, when there's an article in the Greenbelt News Review, and a bunch of volunteers went there and sort of cleared things away, being very, very careful of what we might find. So
Yeah.
I guess there were 3 or 4 or more than that probable sites.
Yeah.
And so finally, you've got the Walker Cemetery, and that's really quite far. So is that reflective of just the size of the plantation or the size of the land holding, the fact that the cemeteries are so far from?
Yeah, I couldn't say for sure. I can say that what we see as far as how we dealt with our dead in the past is that in this era, we really see the family cemetery being on the property. It's just much easier with the way transportation functioned at that time, because we're talking horse and buggy, wagons, things like that. As road technology and just access to community, more people improves, then we start seeing the church cemeteries being more common. And that is overall, not just with these, but with all sort of early American cemeteries, why you don't see these sites in use by these families after a certain time. After a certain time, they belong to a certain church, certain parish, what have you, and then they're choosing to be buried there versus the family plot.
So
I'm sure the distance to it from the house must have been like a very personal decision from each family. Couldn't tell you why they would decide to have it so close or so far. Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and pivot to some of the recommendations for capital improvements, the paths and fencing. But before we do that, Jamie or Megan, if you had any comments about what's been said in terms of the historical timeline and comments.
Great information to be on the record.
So any comments? Let's go ahead and shift over to some of your recommendations,
Sure.
the paths and the fencing. And I guess we can just address each site the way we just did, Hamilton, Turner, and Walker.
Sure. Yeah, so the way that the kind of action plan part of the document is structured. First of all, this will be kind of a living document by the time I submit the final version. There may be more edits to be had, strategy pivot, things like that. And that is totally fine. Once this is turned over, it's completely yours to do with. And this is combination a how to treat cemeteries document. Whoever takes over maintaining these sites, if they're wondering, oh, how should I best, organize a cleanup, or like what things can I have volunteers do at this cleanup, they can look in this document and it provides guidance on how to do that. So part of it is that part of the maintenance plan is recommended materials for like how to clean, landscaping, things like that. The other part is what each of the sites need, because they're all very individual, but they all similarly need the same thing. So the main capital improvements, I have it organized by walking paths, fencing, and then restore and repatriating the grave markers for those that have been removed from the sites. That really mostly applies to Hamilton Cemetery. And then also improving signage in the area, both for interpretive signage and wayfinding purposes. Yeah.
Back to that map of the Hamilton.
Sure.
And if you could just, in 3 or 4 sentences, say what needs to be done. I know maintenance, no sandblasting, no.
No. Yeah, just mow it all over. So the main things that need to be done at Hamilton Cemetery is installing a fence. Another thing that I'll be providing in my final deliverable is I have a tabular inventory of everything that was surveyed. So I have corner points of where a fence could be installed. Really what you're looking at here is doing any sort of landscaping necessary to install a chain link fence around where that red boundary is on Hamilton Cemetery. And I did come up with some very rough cost estimates. They are not written in the plan because every time I try to do this, especially of late, they become irrelevant due to supply issues and shipping and things like that. But as far as installing a 4-foot chain link fence, currently you're looking about $10 to $18 a foot is a good range. And then therefore the approximate cost to install here. I came up with a number that includes fencing in the only 2 cemeteries that need fencing, Hamilton and Walker. And that's between $7,000 and $13,000.
I got to tell you, and I'll go to Mr. Summerlin. Yeah, your report, it's really clear that we need to find a way to secure, but I hate the idea of a chain link fix. Is there some way to kind of integrate that with landscaping or hedges or something?
Took my idea.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I heard you reference the chain link fencing. In your report, you made a reference to having contemporary materials in order to avoid confusion with a dated fencing. But does it have to be chain link fence? Can it be?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
So if there's another material you'd prefer, I could look into it for you. Using contemporary materials is really more in the vein of preservation theory, where we don't want to give something new the appearance that it was original. I I struggle to think that most people will think a wooden fence is original, but they might think that you're trying to imitate something that was there based off of evidence. So that is why something kind of hyper modern like a chain link fence is recommended. I think there are treatments for the chain link fence that can make it look less obvious. Like if it were green or black, you don't visually notice it as much. So that might be something to think about. The thing that I like about chain link is that it has a kind of transparency to it. So you're not like building a solid wall around these places, but you can kind of see through it, if that makes sense.
Member Tim?
I guess, is the fence to delineate the area to prevent access or like, protect the area? Or, I mean, you nodded at so the primary purpose is to delineate the area.
Yeah, really just to delineate the area. So with this site in particular, there's a lot of competing uses in the area. And I think not having a fence here can make it confusing for people trying to garden or do forestry work in this area. But if it were marked, then it's a clear no-go zone, versus now it kind of blends in with everything.
So something lower that doesn't block the view, if part of the advantage of the chain link is not blocking the view of the area.
Yeah.
Something lower, but perhaps, I don't know, more attractive than chain link.
Yeah.
Could be nice so that you're not blocking the view. If the purpose is not to try to have, if we're not intending to have like a gate that we keep people out at certain times, then it seems like, yeah, maybe we can come up with something that still doesn't look like we're trying to recreate the history,
Something in the
but
middle.
also isn't as ugly as chain link fencing.
Around, and I was kind of looking at the types of fencing people use in their yards here. I did see a lot of split rail fencing that was like very rustic, and I did recommend that at one point, but then was told against like the we don't want to look like we're trying to imitate something. But that is one place where you could get ideas for fencing, is seeing what people are doing in their yards around here. These were ultimately, domestic cemeteries in a way, in people's like domestic property, not like a municipal cemetery.
In some senses, like just a short hedge around, like it would take more maintenance, but it would look nicer. And hopefully people would, I mean, I guess there's still a risk that people would think that was something they had then, but.
Or maybe a combination of the two in such a way the hedge sort of obscures the fence. Now, in the Hamilton Cemetery, we need to delineate the area. We need better signage. We need to find a way to bring the headstones back somehow. I'm looking at the square.
Yes.
And I'm looking at the area. Is that in the Forest Preserve?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah, the Forest Preserve has kind of come in around it.
Is that no, that's periwinkle, so the whole area sort of.
And I'm sure it expands farther than that, but in that whole area, when we were walking around, we saw the greatest concentration kind of going southeast from that sign is where the Hamilton Cemetery stones used to be. That would be a great place to put a new interpretive sign.
Okay. So let's go ahead and pivot to the, I guess, the Turner Cemetery, if you can
Yeah.
put that picture up.
So Turner, out of all these, is in pretty great shape. I think mostly because it is within an active use cemetery. Basically, all that I'm recommending here, the current fence only covers the south and the east side. of that property, I am recommending to just fully fence in that area. Again, with something to match the rest.
The area down there on the left-hand corner, the three
Yes.
graves of enslaved people, perhaps,
Not-
probably, or just, are those just three graves?
Not necessarily. So part of our survey is we walked beyond kind of the established limits of each cemetery, looking for signs of anything, mostly depressions in the ground. And in that area, we found 3 kind of regular looking depressions, so we made note of those. Another interesting thing about this property is these 3 cemeteries are by no means the only like burial grounds that would have been in Greenbelt prior to Greenbelt. They are the 3 that made it to the NHL listing and are contributing to the National Historic Landmark District. I think because they maintain the most integrity out of the rest of those. What happened with a lot of these other cemeteries from other families who lived here is as graves were found, a lot of them were reinterred here. Is what I found. Their names, exactly where they were reinterred, how, I unfortunately could not say. But yeah, at the time when Greenbelt was being developed, this was the most accessible cemetery out of the 3. So that's also how this site eventually became the municipal cemetery.
So we need to delineate the area. And also in the report, it mentioned trying to survey some areas with radar or LiDAR to see what is.
Yeah, the technology you're thinking of is called ground penetrating radar, or GPR. I do have a chapter on that because it comes up a lot when you're looking into cemetery research. It's something that my company and a lot of other cultural resource firms do to help them locate graves. The issue is all of these sites are very wooded, and were you to use GPR technology here, the output is giving you anomalies. It's not saying burial located here. So when you're in a wooded area, you're also picking up root systems and things like that from trees. The other thing about GPR, my company, we tend to do it when the intent is to reinter people in a cemetery, like remove them and put them in a new burying place. It's something we did very recently for a similar age cemetery in Virginia. And it ended up being a very cool project because we found current descendants of the family whose graves we found. I believe there were 11 of them or so. This was at a plantation next to the nice bridge that just got replaced between Maryland and Virginia. But basically we found living relatives of them, and they got input into the church that their kin got reinterred at.
Of course, there's Park Service and county and state regulations about internments and reinterments. So finally, the third site is the Walker site.
Yes. Yeah, and for this one, the main issue is the path up to it. It's pretty rugged. What I'm recommending is installing something just like a gravel footpath, something like pea gravel in that area, and potentially rethinking that path that goes up there. you could always, clean up the landscaping and then just put in a path following the existing that goes up there. But Walker Cemetery, in a big part because there are 2 Revolutionary War soldiers buried in this spot. So the Daughters of the American Revolution have been instrumental in maintaining the site. They do annual cleanups. I believe they're there every Memorial Day. The last time we had a work session, we had a woman from the DAR kind of talk about her experience with the site. Anyway, this is a very rough path for them to get up there. But fortunately, unlike the other 2, this site is fully fenced in, albeit by a chain link fence that is from the mid-century. But it is overall rusty, but is doing its job. So I'm not recommending, replacing it at this time. It's not as critical as repairing the path here.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the first time that I looked for it, which was, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, I couldn't find it at
Yeah.
all. Second time, maybe 5 years ago, I did find it. And it's very well preserved. I guess DAR, they go there every year, maybe
Yes.
twice a year. Most recently, it's a little hard to get up there. So do you think, are there other people married there, number 1? And number 2, Megan, you might know the answer to this. The Indian Spring itself is, anecdotally, people have found evidence of indigenous people coming there because it's a spring.
That's right, yes. There are reports of people finding archaeological artifacts there over the years. I know from work that the Reparations Commission is doing right now, that is considered a sacred site by local Piscataway members.
Now, I was asking the city manager, I don't think he's had a chance to take a look at it. Do we own, is that all Greenbelt land back there? All the way to the right-of-way of where the Beltway is?
Megan is signaling me that, yes, she thinks so.
I believe it is, yes.
Good to know, good to know. So those are the 3 sites. We've kind of looked at them. You've given us a quick overview of what needs to be done. Your report was divided up into some sections. So if you want to talk a little bit about the maintenance or the operations, I guess you've done that a little bit. And then we can kind of flip over and talk about grants and, council, if you have questions or things you want to pose about the report, we'll kind of move into that.
Yeah, I'd say from the last time I was here, you guys seemed to like kind of the order of operations that I gave that seemed to make sense, which was great. The thing that I beefed up a bit more was the funding sources. I highlight a few different grant opportunities. This project itself is grant funded and is eligible for a number of grants because of your status here as an NHL and because these sites are eligible for the National Register. The thing to keep in mind with the grants is that a lot of them don't fund things like site improvements. So for the fencing that needs to be installed to secure the sites and the path improvements at Walker, you're potentially looking at using city funds for that. I believe there are a handful of grants that do allow for site improvements like that. Looking at the page here, the Maryland Heritage Areas, they have capital grants for repair and alteration of an existing site to return it to a state of utility. That could be something to pursue. And then as the sites are, pardon me, secured, there's also probably even more funding opportunity for the development of interpretive materials, such as signs. I think, especially with Hamilton Cemetery, there's an opportunity to get creative with how you display those stones. And you will also have to get creative, because they can't be put back to where they were, when they were moved. If a map or photographs of what it looked like turn up, then, joyous day, we can maybe put them back. But as it stands with the documentation and the evidence we have, they'll need to be displayed creatively that doesn't imply that somebody is buried here. And that's been a very challenging thing for me to research. So, yeah, I've recommended in that, potentially having like a design contest, design charrette with the community, things like that.
Really cool. And
Yeah.
in your report, you mentioned at one point, pretty early on, that in order to get the National Historic Landmark designation, or on the registry, the areas, the cemeteries were sort of described both as for historical significance, but also recreational significance. So in
Yeah.
particular, looking at the Walker site, given the indigenous history, their significance, maybe with a charrette or just looking at what we might do in that area, maybe there's an opportunity to actually do something very creative, very meaningful there that would just be a great place to visit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes, cemeteries are kind of cool. I've been to some really big ones, and people in Philadelphia, they actually, it's a place where the neighborhood gets together and walk dogs. Same thing with the cemetery down the senatorial, the cemetery down in D.C., Congressional, yeah. But that's a little bit off topic. Thoughts from council or anybody from the public want to make any comments before we, Councilmember McKinney?
So I think, thank you for the work. Really great detail and thoughtfulness put towards it, so I appreciate that. I'm wondering how this information from the report gets then implemented into some of the work that you're doing at the museum. Because I think there's one thing to make sure that we have the wayfinding and the preservation of it, but these stories are already being documented, so how are we starting to carry that through in the museum? Because that could also I'm just thinking about funding that will be needed, right? So if we can start putting out the story to the community, there may be residents and community members that are interested in actually helping to preserve it by providing.
Yeah, Jamie and I have talked about the fact that the cemeteries are included in the wayfinding. I think yes, they are part of that plan, that the sign is just saying what they are will be there. But as far as interpretive signage goes, one avenue might be to incorporate the cemeteries into the wayside panels that are throughout the community. We have a sort of, model for those. So information could be added to the sites via those wayside panels. You can also add QR codes to them. One question that I think council may need to think about in consultation with senior management is where will care of these or oversight of these live in terms of the committee, the citizen committee structure? Is it Parks and Recreation? Is it planning? It sort of has aspects that go across some of those boundaries. So aside from that, going forward, I think there will be opportunities for grant funding for this. And of course, some cemeteries in some communities have their own friends group or something like that. So, but as far as having this information at the museum, we look forward, once we have 10A up and running, to having this information available and searchable, excuse me, along with our other holdings in the archives. So, we hope that we'll get more visitation from people doing genealogical work or, looking into the history of the land before Greenbelt was built on it. So.
Just a follow-up question. Are the cemeteries included in any of the tours that you do currently?
Not currently, and that's partly because they are a little more difficult to get to. They are, I think they're noted on the big fold-out map, if I'm not mistaken. I think they are. But because the tours we do right now are primarily walking tours, to walk over to Turner, Hamilton would be the most likely spot. So we hope that we will be able to incorporate those. You know, at the museum, we would like to develop a walking tour that really does address the 19th century and 18th century history of the land. And it's documents like this that will help us craft that. So this is all, you know, these are all things we hope to do in the future after 10A's up.
And of course, the maintenance of the Turner, that's already in the budget, the city budget. Councilmember Fritz.
Thank you so much. This is a really great document. I know on page 59 of the packet, 53 of the document, you note that an organization like the Reparations Commission could take a role in deciding what a potential monument would look like. Has there been discussion, has this been in the workflow yet of the commission?
Yeah, yes, to some extent there has been. In fact, there's a project that I think will be sort of a continuing project, perhaps after the Reparations Commission finishes its work in terms of turning in a report. That's a memorialization project to actually have the names of those individuals who were enslaved on the land that became Greenbelt, acknowledged and published somewhere, or perhaps on site. There's been talk of whether some places I know of have done a sort of event that's like a memorial, sort of acknowledging the fact that these individuals are buried in these sites. So that remains to be seen, but it has been discussed. And I'm hoping that that Reparations Commission may make some recommendations as to how to approach that, who to involve. Harmed communities obviously would be the first individuals to be involved in that.
And then one more question, then a comment. I don't know if I missed this. Is there an overall estimate of how many total bodies estimated were between the three sites, and what the breakdown was between enslaved people and white people?
So short answer, no. Knowing the exact amount, especially for enslaved burials, is quite difficult in a lot of circumstances. I do include within the histories, or like the historic context section of each family, and things like the census, you'll see like the number of enslaved people listed in that. So from that, we have an idea of how many are on the property, but to 100% say like, oh yeah, they were all necessarily buried here, they could have gone somewhere else. There's record of some being emancipated. I know there was a recent article in the Greenbelt News Review about Samuel Turner emancipating Vachel Waters, I believe was his name. So yeah, rough estimate, in total, we're looking at like 10 known solid burials. In the case of Turner Cemetery, there's multiple kind of raw stone markers, and it's a little difficult to say whether these are, a lot of them appear to be in headstone, footstone configuration. So it's difficult to say. There's 14 stones there to say that equates to 14 people, maybe closer to 7.
Thank you very much.
I'll just close by saying that, yeah, I really appreciate this work. It's really important, and it does go in tandem with the work we're doing on the city is doing on the Reparations Commission. And it's just as this next week is Juneteenth, it's just important to remember that these are, every one of these stories was a human story, and that, this was for the cultivation of tobacco, which is a cash crop and is not necessary for human survival.
Yeah.
This was a for-profit enterprise that locked people into chattel slavery, and I think I want to make sure that we contextualize that properly for people, that it's not just a cemetery, that it is a monument to that history.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do make, granted, it might be far in the future, 'cause I'm kind of in the list of steps to take. Stabilizing the sites is first step, but I do make some recommendations for thinking about how you might want to memorialize that, whether it's something traditional like a monument of some sort, or something a bit more creative than just putting a plaque up.
Let's see. Jay Davis, while you're making your way up there, please. So, in Vansville, are there more? This is off. So are there more people of color, large cemeteries in Vansville? I know that there was a significant population around the Merkirk Iron Works of African Americans. So I'm just thinking maybe some people, enslaved people, may have been buried outside of Greenbelt in Vansville. Did you run across anything like that?
Unfortunately, no, but I think it's definitely a possibility. I think you also definitely see that with people who are maybe born closer to emancipation, and definitely if they're passing away after emancipation, why would they be buried here? They're going to be somewhere else.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Jay Davis?
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. About a month before Memorial Day, there was a Facebook posting by one of the DAR chapter people. And she basically was announcing that they were not going to do a cleanup this year, because she went out there and she said there were so many fallen trees and shrubbery that because they're kind of on the older side, that she did not recommend that they tried to get up there to do their annual cleaning. And that kind of bothered me, because we've known that the trees had fallen and the shrubs were there, and yet it seems that we have not done anything about it. So I think the main thing that we need from this master plan is, this is wonderful, but we don't want the plan to go on a shelf someplace and then nothing is done, forgotten. The main thing is you don't want things to get worse. And right now, they're getting worse, at least at the Walker Cemetery. So I looked at the steps, and I think the steps are very clear what we can do now, which is, someone in Public Works, a crew, trains in what they need to do. We get the equipment, I think we probably have it, and then we make a seasonal maintenance plan for all three. Now, we can at least do that, and then we can start talking about monuments and events and where do we put the stones and things like that, because those we can get grants for. And I think, and I've said this during the budget process, there is a place in the budget that we can put this. It shouldn't be hidden in recreation or hidden in Public Works. It should be, it already has a page. We have a page for the municipal cemetery. Make that all cemeteries. And then you have line items and money, and whatever you need is there. And I've mentioned this, and I hope that that's taken care of. In the 18th century and the 19th century, well, the 18th century, cemeteries were all of a sudden considered recreation areas. That's why you have these beautiful landscaped, treed, shrubbed parks, cemetery parks. And people would go there for picnics. This is where they would walk, and they would amble on Sunday, not just to see their relatives, but just to see everybody else. In Congressional Cemetery, you pay money for a fee to walk your dog, and that money is used to maintain the cemetery. They also have an association that makes sure that if you are walking your dog, you're actually cleaning up after your dog at the same time. So maybe what we need to find or to organize, and maybe that's something I can do, a Friends of Greenbelt Historical Cemeteries, a group that will constantly remind them as the city what they need to do. And if you're thinking of maybe not a walking tour, a bike tour, because that you can transport yourself there. And I do believe there is a picnic table at the Indian Springs area. So
There is, yeah.
yeah, and that was put in by one of the office buildings.
Yeah,
that
it was put
a-
in by the building
Yeah,
that shares the parking lot with it.
and that was due to a recommendation, I believe, by myself a long time ago, that if they're going to be that close to a historical place, maybe they should put a picnic table there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are great suggestions. First step is implementing a maintenance plan, just figuring out a schedule for when things need to be done. We probably, did you get the name of that person, or I remember, were you in contact with the DAR person?
Yeah, the name of the woman who was here at the last city council work session.
Chapter leader,
Yeah.
perhaps we can, if we can do some maintenance, perhaps we can reach out to her and see if we can.
Yeah, and as far as current maintenance needs, what you're talking about is the path up there. There are no, potential like sensitive human remains with that. You basically don't need special training to be able to get a crew out there to clear trees, trim back some of the hedges on the path up to Walker.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, there's just a comment online from Ben, I'm not sure which Ben this is, but it says fallen trees are not blocking the path to Walker Cemetery. So it may be someone who's been up there more recently that the trees. So I guess that's something we might need to go verify and see what is actually needed in terms of clearing that path, if it is indeed the case that there are fallen trees or not fallen trees.
You were saying in your report a lot of greenbrier?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a little rugged for the DAR. I was happy to be wearing hiking boots that day to get up there. But yeah, there are things like briars, poison ivy in that area. Yeah. Yeah, they're not just visiting, but they are cleaning up the stones, polishing them off, things like that.
Okay. Megan, Jamie, Mr. Summerone, anything, questions or anything to add? Well, Ms. Kimball, I want to thank you for this work that you've done. It's fascinating, a great read. You've unearthed a number of items that we would not have known about otherwise.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a
Hamilton
real honor
Bible.
to get to work on this project.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So at this time, and Megan and Jamie, thank you so much. Thank you. So we're going to pivot at this time and move to the next section of our agenda, where we're going to talk a little bit about the budget process. We made it through the budget. It took a while. So Mayor Pro Tem was interested in before too much time had passed, having a discussion a little bit about the timeline, the process, and just our impressions of what went well and what we might improve on. So at this time, let's go ahead and open up the discussion. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, well, and Mr. Summerone prepared a memo, some recommendations to improve the process. I think, I mean, speak just to, but I think the one of the basic ones we've talked about before is recommendation number 2. There is the county has an earlier requirement for sending in our tax rates. So we're going to have to be more, we're going to have to condense the timeline next year. That's just sort of a fact. And then we have sometimes done the pre-budget work session, but I guess I should, Mr. Summerone, you should just talk to your suggestions.
Yeah, and you know, that's been something that we have wanted to do every year, so thank you so much for putting that forward, because I think that's important, both for staff to be able to share their recommendations and how things are shaping up, but also for the public and for council to kind of weigh in really early on, and, you know, this is a priority, and so on. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You both covered it well. Those are two tangible recommendations. Next year, next cycle, I imagine, I anticipate it'll be particularly challenging because our labor costs is just our labor cost alone is outpacing our revenue growth. So we'll be hitting some serious barriers in the preparation of next budget cycle. For the second item, I limit my recommendation to meeting that May 15th deadline that the county government has and the state government has. I regularly speak with my team about being prepared for all the potential requests of council. So I'm not I would love to do something what other communities do, that they have one budget work session and get a budget approved in just 2 meetings. I know that might not be feasible for us given the amount of discussion we have around our budget. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend or prescribe a number of work sessions. I want council to make an informed vote on the budget. So we are prepared to do what's necessary to ensure that that council has all the information it needs to vote and approve a budget. But I think that there are some efficiencies that we should explore, because going through 12 work sessions is quite the endeavor and very time consuming.
So, in talking with your peers and with folks from the county, this is the first time that they've, set such an early timeline. Of course, it's the state's deadline. It was the 28th, I believe.
Yes, the state deadline is the 28th. This is the second year that it's gone into effect. Last year we pushed back because they wanted us to meet that 28th deadline. This year is more significant because they were adamant that they wanted things by the 15th.
So in talking to your peers around the county, the other city managers, there's not enough critical mass to force the county to move that back a little bit. Of course, the county needs time. Wouldn't want to rush them.
Well, we don't have critical mass of communities that approve their budget past the May 15th deadline. We're one of the few. Most are earlier in May, some as early as April. They're having their budget approved. Now, we by comparison with the county council budget approval process, I think we're still on time.
Do those other municipalities, do they have a different fiscal year? Are they on that July 1st, June 30th? Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem.
So I think those two, make sense and are fairly easy to implement. We just need to get a work session on the agenda in December. And then I think the second one may be a little bit more complicated. I think one of the things that we tried to do, and Ms. Lashley Mullen, could you put up the schedule, the other item that was in the packet? So, this was an attempt to try to make sure that we had sort of some of the line item type questions get addressed in writing. And I think this is something but we're going to have to condense this in order to be done by the first meeting in May. And so I think a couple of things, so I guess I would love to hear people's thoughts about this schedule, this sort of thing. I think in order to make that schedule work, I think we're going to have to try to keep to be really disciplined about having in the work sessions, we talk about discussion items and really budget relation items. We have a tendency to go into a lot of other operational type of things during the budget rather than strictly talking about the budget. And so I think if we're going to condense some of these items or some of these sessions into combine them in order to have enough time between when the budget is introduced in March and May, we're going to have to combine some of these sessions. And so I think that's going to mean that we can't go line by line. We're going to have to do some of that ahead of time. I guess some of my other thoughts, and I'd love to hear what other folks said. Was this schedule helpful? I think maybe a little bit less, I think there was a little bit too much in that first session. There was a lot, so I think we need to rebalance some of this a little bit. And I think we should look at that calendar well ahead and try to do that. But again, I think if we can be disciplined about doing questions that are just sort of the nitty-gritty, what does this mean, that sort of thing, and do that in writing, and then talk about the big budget questions during the actual work sessions, that can help us be a little bit more efficient. I think the other, one of the other thoughts that I had written down before was for Greenridge House, I think it makes it more complicated if we meet at Greenridge House, and honestly, that isn't a super big budget. Part of the budget. I think we should actually combine that with another session and then do a separate meet and greet at Greenridge House for the Greenridge residents. That's not a formal budget session over there, but is just a chance for the residents to talk to us and raise whatever concerns they have, rather than trying to make that part of the budget session. Because to be honest, the budget part of Greenridge House is really important, but it could be done as a combined with one of the other sessions, I think, fairly easily. What the Greenridge House residents like is the chance to get to talk to us, and we weren't able to do that this year because of some other factors. But if the purpose is to have them have that opportunity to interact with us, we make that a separate meeting with a separate purpose and not the budget session, which, you know, honestly, a lot of them would probably rather just ask us questions and address their other issues that may not be budget related. So that was one of my other suggestions.
Well, one thing that I'd really like to find a way to do is we made the decision to break the recognition groups into 2 sessions, and I know it makes for a long discussion, but in the past we were able to kind of, by starting a little bit earlier, ending a little bit later, kind of getting all those recognition groups in on the same day, and that kind of created a scenario where we're hearing it all at the same time also. So in making judgments and kind of balancing things out, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of put everything in perspective. So, I mean, that's one thing.
That
we
must
could
have been
do.
before I was on council, because I think we've always done it in 2 sessions in the 5 budgets that I've been through. Haven't?
It's always been one, pretty much.
Well, I was going to say since I've been on council. I think we've always had to do it in 2 since I've been on council. Now, that'd be a pretty short time to talk to each one of them, because we already only give them 15 minutes.
Schedule, but it's all at once. Councilmember Niesel.
Thanks. Jumping in on the recognition groups, to me, that was one of the most helpful budget work sessions, pardon me, because that is the one where we don't necessarily have a chance to speak to them beforehand. So if we're going to be consolidating, I would not recommend that we consolidate the recognition groups. However, I loved this calendar. I didn't, I'll admit, always hit the dates. But I really, really loved the accountability that this put on us, because our staff deserve time to research these answers. If we want good answers to our questions, they deserve the time to look for them. So I loved being able to add the comments directly to the sheet. And then I would love next year, as we're looking to consolidate and shorten the timeline just a little bit, I noticed that sometimes if there weren't additional questions that council or the mayor had, it kind of felt like, oh, thanks for coming. So maybe to account for that, or to adjust for that, or to prevent us from then having to go back and rehash or think up new questions just to make it worth our staff members' time for coming, if we have them kind of do a little narrative based on all of the questions that we did give them, and see if that might help us lead the discussion a little bit better. I'm just, as we look to simplify things next year.
Okay, other council members? That first session was just, it was too much.
It was a little too much.
Yeah, that was too much. Councilmember McKinney.
I think one of the things, so let me step back. I think the calendar and thinking as far out as we can to give staff time to prepare is definitely helpful. I know I use this and went through and provided my feedback ahead of time. That also helped me to be able to be more focused in the conversation during those work sessions. So I appreciate the calendar. One thing I would say is that I think thinking about the budget even before this April date, or I'm sorry, this March date is even more important. So we started talking a little bit about this in the Monday session, where we were talking about how can we, throughout the year, think about the budget more strategically in a more routine basis, so that when we get into the budget work session, it truly is about thinking about the budget and what we need to move around. Because I think it is important to hear from staff and hear about the accomplishments and the highlights that are going on in the city. And how can we do that throughout the year so that we can focus on the fiscal part when we really need to focus on that. So, you know, one thought is, I know that the city manager provides a quarterly report to council, and we have a work session around that. Maybe there needs to be a little bit greater of an emphasis on the fiscal part of it, rather than just a report out on what's happening in the city. So that we can have that in mind as we're going into each upcoming quarter. And then also from sort of a report out basis, I feel like we started doing in some of those quarterly reports, and maybe we did in all quarterly reports, where certain departments shared more holistically about what they were doing. So then maybe looking at more of a monthly basis for each department to kind of share out, so that we can get more of the narrative throughout the year, so that then when we get to the fiscal work sessions, it's about, we've already had the narrative about what's going on in each department. So I don't want to dilute the hearing about the accomplishments and the work, but I also want to try to figure out how we can focus in certain categories of time, especially when we need to get through a budget that most likely will be equally as difficult next year.
Those are interesting comments. Yeah. Councilmember.
Yeah, I just want to echo my colleagues' statements about the suggested question deadlines. That was also really helpful for me. It just kept me on track, kept me focused, just everything everyone else said. Like, it was really helpful, and I feel like I did a better job of getting my questions in, having those deadlines. So I think that we should definitely do that going forward. I think something else that we might want to consider is doing 1 or 2 budget sessions on a weekend, because I know no one really wants to work on a weekend, but there are some people who care about the budget that can't come to meetings in the evenings. So it could give different people an opportunity to come and weigh in and listen. And it could help us compress our timeline a little bit as well, if we did that. So that was just one, that's something that I had been thinking about.
The suggestion has been made in the past that maybe some of the recognition groups, the members might find it easier to come in on a weekend than in the evening. Councilmember Fritz.
Yeah, I think that I want to uplift Councilmember McKinney's point about having narrative kind of review of departmental goals and objectives throughout the year, so that if we want to have a more refined discussion, that would be very helpful. And I'm just thinking like the different frameworks for which we can actually analyze the budget next year. I'm trying to think ahead. You know, a base budget review would be something I would be interested in having a really deep discussion about service delivery and how efficiently we're providing our services. And then looking at outcomes-based budgeting as well. How are the investments we're making actually enhancing the core goals of the city? You know, because I understand we don't want to spend too much time talking about details during the budget sessions that are ancillary to budget, but I do think that the investments we do want tied to some measurable results for our residents as well. And then a more global discussion that I don't think is going to happen in the next year, but I do want to incorporate more is discussions of participatory budgeting as well. How do we actually empower our residents to help get more hands-on in the design of especially things like capital improvements and things like that, help residents kind of lead the process of designing the improvements they want to see in their community. I think there's a lot of great examples, both in the United States and internationally, of participatory budgeting, increasing resident input when people feel like there's actual power behind their decision-making process. So those are just my overall thoughts, but overall, this was my first budget, so I don't have a baseline to compare it to too much else. So I'm going to defer to colleagues on how we should restructure it, and then once I'm too deep, maybe I will have more thoughts on how we can better do it after I've had 2 budgets to kind of chew it all over.
I do appreciate, quarterly, monthly or quarterly updates, and I think we get them, but sometimes we don't really have the time or a chance to kind of talk through them a little in greater detail, or getting a better sense of what's working, where money maybe potentially could be shifted from one line item to another because there's an opening or a staff position that's not been filled. So with those quarterly updates, I think they're really good. I do appreciate focusing in on different departments. I think that's a good chance to have the back and forth, the dialogue, and really get a sense of the accomplishments and the aspirations of the various departments. There's so much good work that goes on. Let's see, Superman Online? No, Jay Davis.
Jay Davis, Greenbelt East. You managed to hit 2 of my favorite subjects on the same night. Thank you.
Just for you, Jay.
I really like the suggestions that are being made, and we've always tried to have a pre-budget meeting in December, and it never happened because there's holidays. So maybe try to have it in November. I mean, some of the trends you're already going to see in November, and that will give staff more time over the holidays and everything else to work on the budget itself. Some meetings, especially since you've now closing your meetings earlier, you need to start some of the meetings at 7 o'clock when you know it's going to be a long type of work session. Saturdays, definitely, that is a good idea. And I like the idea of the quarterly department meetings because you're seeing the positive side of those departments then, and if they are having some issues, they can start talking about it. And then that you don't have to do that at the budget time. And then finally, maybe you start your budget work sessions in February. Especially because we used to. The city manager is now just pulling his hair out right here. But if you start earlier, it used to be that you had to have the budget set by the beginning of June. I remember that June 6th or June 5th used to be the day. Now, I mean, it's really, everybody's pushing back because they probably have schedules that they have pushed back on at the same time. So if you're going to move something back, then everything has to move back. And yes, consolidation helps, but that means that you have to consolidate your questions and your comments. And I know that you don't want to hear this, but sometimes the most time is spent by people making comments. And the new people especially, you don't know what's already happened in the past. So you ask questions and the rest of us are going, you don't know that? Well, you don't. So we have to re-explain every 2 years what is happening when people have that. So I think all the suggestions are good ones, and I think some other suggestions in pushing back and doing the best you can is about as best you can, because, other cities, when you talk to them, they do not understand why it takes us so long to do the budget. They take 2 Saturdays. City manager says, here it is, okay, yeah, I'll question, no question, fine, and it's done. So I like our way better because I know we're doing a good job.
Those are great suggestions, great observations. The thing about November, what tends to happen, I'm just speculating, but every 2 years there's an election. So with the election, people are campaigning, there are new people coming on, so it's actually hard to hit that December pre-budget workshop because there's just council's burned out or is new and not able to, so it's the holidays too. There you go.
Yeah, I think we'd have to look at early December probably.
From experience, for us, the November, December deadline, this is when the city manager provides guidance, and the guidance is based around the expected property tax revenues that we get. We get that around December, and that gives us a good idea of what revenue to count on for the following fiscal year. And so that kind of sets the tone for our budget process, because property taxes represent the vast majority of our revenue.
So true.
So that's what kicks off the meeting on our end. We could calculate the vast majority of our expenditures now, because 74% of our budget is personnel cost. Another 10-15% is fixed costs, utilities, insurance for the properties. There are things that we can estimate because they are almost mandatory services. Goes to your program-based budgeting or other strategies we can use. So that makes up a good 85 to 90% of our budget. So what we've got some some flexibility is around that 10%. I don't want to say discretion, because it's not generally do we want to do this or not. It's things that are a lot more flexible, like the council budgets, training dollars. Are we replacing this HVAC versus windows, those kinds of things. And then obviously the capital budget, and the capital budget is separate from our operating budget.
Okay. Understood. That creates even more context. Mr. Orleans, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Bill Orleans Greenbelt. There was a suggestion presented Monday night. Questions were not permitted on that question from the floor. It was then suggested it would be further discussed tonight. I'm wondering if there's a suggestion presented Monday night by Councilmember Pompey is being removed from discussion.
We just haven't gotten it to it yet.
Well, I look forward to being recognized again when you return to it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's go.
Yeah, I think, I mean, unless there's other general thoughts, I think we'll have to look at the timeline. It sounds like in general, most people like having the questions ahead of time. I think looking at community engagement clearly is something we need to do with a weekend something, and maybe some other participatory budgeting things. Yeah, so I mean, those would seem to me like sort of the key takeaways from that. And then what I was going to suggest next was to have Ms. Pompey talk a little bit more about the suggestion for the Finance Committee that came up on Monday.
Okay.
Don't forget about
Saturdays too, but Ms. Pope hasn't had a chance.
don't forget the quarterly updates, I think, from each.
Oh, yes, yeah, I think using those more to maybe use some more strategic planning for the for funding.
Financial updates, and Councilmember McKinney, you kind of said it in a slightly different way, sort of monthly updates, quarterly updates, so that.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I would suggest is, and this probably takes some further communication and thought around it, so please bear with me. I think it is helpful that at each meeting, regular council meeting, you provide kind of a general review of all of the tasks that were accomplished by all of your different department heads and teams. I'm wondering, though, if that gives us exactly what we need to be more strategic in thought, and whether or not we could actually use the team's time more wisely. Like, we don't need to know the details of, you know, that somebody submitted this email or sent out this, like that. I don't think we need that. But I think what we would love to see is how each of those teams are moving towards specific goals and metrics that we're trying to set, especially in this budget process, and that you're setting, you know, through your annual process with your teams. So my thinking is that maybe a monthly report towards, you know, like what were your top 3 goals that were achieved versus just kind of a list of all of the various things that were accomplished. And then that becomes something that we can have that then gets added to the narrative that you share out in your quarterly work session review. So that becomes kind of elaborated in that. So I'm trying to look to not create more work for the team, but have it be more focused so that the narrative comes in maybe a monthly report and then a report out during a quarterly session.
And I like hearing that. We do have some very firm process on what we're reporting. So there are day-to-day activities that just don't make it to EDV, right? The team mode, X parcel, whatever. Like, I don't even get that because it's task. It's just part of the everyday. The number of stops the police department makes, I see that on a weekly basis. Now I'm getting even photos of who got arrested and whatnot. I don't always read the details, but you know, those are just day-to-day activities, recreation, same thing, right? The staff that runs the aquatic fitness center is just day-to-day. A lot of the MBOs and the reporting to council is structured around new initiatives and projects. And that's the focus, because that's the new. That's what council is primarily focused on. Where are we with whatever X new things, rather than how many people visited the Aquatic and Fitness Center this week or this month? Where's the revenue? How's the revenue performing for the Aquatic and Fitness Center? We track that internally, but it's not something that we're reporting externally. It does show up on the quarterly reports, and I welcome getting feedback from you on what you would like to see on the quarterly report, because the quarterly reports there's two aspects to it. One is the revenue aspect. How are we performing against the budgeted revenue, and we on target, any deviations, and we report out how we're doing on hotel tax, cannabis tax. It's not a lot of money. It's downward trending, actually. So we report out on all the major revenue items, and likewise for expenditures, how we're spending by department, where are we compared to target and whatnot. So I welcome any feedback on what else you would like to see on the quarterly reports, particularly the finances, because we're talking about budget. There are things from a budget process that, unless we're looking at service delivery, 80% of our budget is fixed, right? Unless we're thinking we want to change a program or change a department, the cost is fixed. So we could focus on what are those program delivery models that want to reconsider, right? I think this year the big significant program delivery was, okay, we had the CARES activities. I think that's in dollar amounts, that was the largest. Front-facing delivery, service delivery, was closing of Greenbelt East and what that impact would be. Last year was the Save As You Throw. That was a big program, not significant financial variation from changing from the traditional model to piloting the pilot model. But next budget, I think you're going to see more of that. So I welcome that level of feedback. That is mixing a outcomes-based budget versus a program-based budget or a zero-based budget to benchmarking what we have. There are a lot of ways to get at what you're getting at, Ms. McKinney, and probably more importantly is what is the performance measures that we're tracking and how dollars and cents translate to outcomes and outputs. Because there's some departments it's purely outputs, right? The police department, it's how many stops and calls for service you're able to make and what's your response time. The getting at the qualitative, how good did we do that interaction? How good are we reducing crime? That's a bit more involved than perhaps a budget.
Reducing complaints, for example, is another metric you can look at.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Sorry, but I'm not necessarily pushing back, but I'm just thinking about what you were just saying about the police department. Like, I think you could still look at it from an outcome-based versus an outcome perspective. Like, you could say, how many police officers do we have, right? And because of maybe Chief said this when we were doing the walk, because we have this many police officers, we are able to respond in this short period of time because this is our level. And so that sort of thing is really measurable, and I think what the community wants to see. And so then when you get into a fiscal conversation, you can then look at to say, okay, if we were to increase that number by this much percentage, whatever that is, then that would mean our response time would go from this amount to this amount. And then that would take how much more money in our budget? And is it worth it to have that response time go down? Like that, I think, is a real critical conversation for us to then guide our forecasting for future years.
Right, absolutely. And that speaks specifically to the structure of how we do our district patrolling and how many folks we have on staff. We're staffing 2 per district. So we're looking at minimum of, we want to keep 6 on staff at all times. That's patrol. We won't operate with less than 4. So 4 is our minimum. We know we have to have 4 patrol officers at any one time. Well, ideally it's 6. So if that is if we want to change that structure, then there's a scaling factor, right? It's not just adding 1 person to the team. It's if you want 6 on at all times, if that becomes our floor, then our regular operating cycle is maybe 8, 3 for each district. So then that is a structural analysis.
So I think that's the type of conversation that I would love to have in a work session, because that's where we're really thinking about, okay, what are the pros and cons of this? And then we can then be more informed in going in to determine specific line items.
Yeah. And, I haven't specifically spoken with the chief about this, but he'll probably watch, and he'll love to have a conversation about having 8 officers on time.
Okay. Well, Councilmember Fritz, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and that's why I think, either, whether it's base budget or outcomes-based budgeting review, having a public discussion and engaging the public in the discussion of what metrics are the priorities for public safety, for, code enforcement for these different sectors, because I think of the CIT position, right? I know that we can demonstrate, I'm reading the weekly reports, I see that is a busy workflow.
Yes.
So we can then show in the budget, we are funding this position because it will help us do X, Y, Z, and we hope to accomplish X, Y, Z. And if we don't accomplish X, Y, Z, we can come back next time and say, why didn't we get there? What was kind of the hiccups? What other trainings, investments, or other policies might we need to meet the goals that we're setting?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a program that the performance management metrics are mature. We on a weekly basis, you can see how many cases the CIT counselor has, and we know from our work in social services what's an acceptable caseload for a CIT manager, and we track that for both the CIT as we do for the CARES department. Dr. Park is mindful of the counselors and how many cases they're able to carry, and in fact, many of our case managers have a waiting list because they are maxed out at their caseload volume. And you can't add more because then you just can't provide a quality service to everyone.
This is a great discussion. Let's go ahead at this time. The Budget Task Force or Finance Committee, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about that. So during the course of this last budget session and working with Mr. Summeron to sort of identify cuts and efficiencies to fund the CARES program, and really just listening to the advice and guidance of our auditors and our treasurer, it's really clear that we're going to have to be, we have some difficult budgeting years coming up, and I think that council needs to be thinking a lot more proactively and be a lot more involved in the budget, and that we have to offer more guidance to the city manager prior to November. So the idea behind a finance working group would really be a couple of people who work with the city manager to identify very specific topics to talk about and to sort of research, like, I don't know, annexations or commercial taxes, areas for that we can improve, areas where we can trim the budget, and things like that. And then sort of this wouldn't be a group a decision-making group, but it would be a research group that sort of digs into these topics and then brings them to the committee of the whole for a work session to discuss with all of council. Like, okay, so this is, these are some ways that we can generate new revenue. And then we would discuss them with all of council and sort of figure out, which directions we want to go in, or these are some programs that we see where we could make some efficiencies. And, that way, as we're coming into the budget, we're all a little more aware of what's going on, and we all have a bit more of a handle on sort of the things that we need to do to either generate revenue or, make some cuts. That way, the city manager also has a little more direction when he's trying to close budget gaps of sort of where our priorities are and what efficiencies we'd like to see.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, and I believe, Mr. Samaron, you have said that this is something you had in your previous, did you mention that you had this one before in Ohio?
Yes, in Ohio, we have Finance Committee.
And is there anything you'd add to what Ms. Pompey said about what that Finance Committee did related to the budget and related to the council as a whole?
I would add, there's the policy review. There are things that that the city manager budgets for that are outside of the city manager's control. They're policy decisions that council has made, and they have a financial impact. So some of those things I try to stay out of it because they're policy issues. That includes the retiree prescription subsidies, having retirees on health insurance, external costs like the grants and contributions, memberships which the organization's a member of, and how do we budget for those, and what do we choose to be members of? Training dollars for council or council activities and special programs. Those are things that we maintain funding for, and we don't necessarily, with the exception of this year, with the exception of the 2027 budget, that we did not add the $30,000 for the discretionary grants line item. We fund everything else at maintaining historical numbers.
I think these discussions traditionally, although it's a little bit harder to have in-depth discussions on some of the policy issues and just the operational issues that you're bringing up related to the budget, it's traditionally we've had strong opinions about discussing these matters as a whole. Council members don't want to be left out. These discussions are very important to me, so if there were a finance committee, I would definitely want to be involved. I'm kind of thinking, part of the discussion that we've had tonight about different ways to kind of get updates and information on the implications of ways, measuring and metrics on how the money is actually being spent, budget year to date versus past years. And so getting that information to everyone on a regular basis and having a little bit of time somehow to actually talk about it, I think is very, very important. So my inclination, and I just think we need to drill down on, this idea of task forces and committees. I think we need to talk a little bit more about whether or not a committee is a standing committee or if it's temporary, like a task force, if the membership would be certain council members, or if it would intentionally rotate so that everybody has a chance to kind of weigh in. I think there's some more issues that we need to kind of flesh out as we move forward. We've created 2 or 3 committees already, right?
Well, we have informally created the legislative update group that you and Jenny are part of. We never formally created that. I think the only other one that we've actually created, which hasn't actually met, to be honest, was the one to support CARES in the 501c3. So we've actually only created one, And then the meeting with the legislative advisors is sort of an ad hoc version of that, although we never formally created. So no, we haven't actually created several.
Well, thanks for the correction, but, I'm looking for a more positive way to kind of move forward.
Well,
So,
but you
hold on.
You made
Another
a
council
statement.
member.
You made a
has-
statement that
wants
was
to say
factually
something.
incorrect, that we
Well,
had
you know,
created several of these committees, and we
read it.
actually haven't, Mr. Jordan.
Please. Yeah, this, the correction's correct,
Do you want to be wrong?
Well,
No, I don't want to be gaslighted either, please, Ms. Pope.
I think
Ms.
we're
Niesel.
going, we have not created them, but we're going more and more in a direction that only a few of us are able to attend meetings and want to report to council. When we're adding now the liaison to the theater, we're adding possibly the finance committee, then we have added the CARES issue to help them with their 401 or 501c3, and so this is 3 already, not to mention all the other meetings that, of course, some of us can attend during the day, are happening with state and county officials, and that, I think, is the issue. And I think that we are a council as a whole, and I think we all need to be informed equally of what's going on, and should also have the same opportunities. So that, I've said it, I don't know how many times. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this time. I said it over and over again. I am not in favor of creating these little subgroups within council. I don't think it's right. But I can sit here all evening and say the same thing. If 4 people on the council think they want to do it, then they're going to do it. So, but I agree with Emmett. I think we need to be cautious and be fair to everyone and really realize that we're all council members, not just a few of us.
Councilmember Niesel.
Thanks. I do not mean to come right after you, Councilmember Pope, and say the opposite, but I see it as I have an opposing lens, if you will, whereas I know that I am extremely limited in the time that I can devote to council, and I also know that there is so much that deserves our attention, and we have seen recently that there is at least one instance in which we could have been paying a little more attention. And I think that if we were to establish, just kind of focus groups, and it would, of course, be equal in that everyone would have equal access to be a part of it if they wanted to, I think it would be really, really helpful for council as a whole. And I think it would be helpful to our city manager, especially with the budget, to disseminate information in a way that can be brought to a council meeting with a little more, there can be some forethought as to why it is being brought up, instead of just Mr. Selmaron having to say, I noticed this thing, and I'd really hope that one of you makes a motion that we can approve this thing, or adds it to the agenda. I think it would be really, really helpful just to help everyone be more collaborative. And so it's just very interesting, Councilmember Pope, to hear you see it as something that would divide us more, because I think it's something that would make us work better together.
Okay, if I may, just for a second.
No, and I wasn't.
No.
Just, yeah.
And I don't disagree with you, what you said, right? And I don't have a problem with like the theater, for instance, right? I think I actually liked that idea when Ms. Pompey brought that up, right? I say, oh, let's see, how can we help? We need someone there at the meeting, and maybe then we can get some more feedback, right? Because really, that's what we need. And so I'm saying that's okay with me. I don't have an issue with that. It just seems to be more and more and more and bigger meetings with very important stakeholders. And I think and that's where my issue is, right? Not overall. If we want to do it on occasion, say, okay, who can go to this meeting because this is very important, that's okay, right? But it just happens more and more and more, and I think that's where we're treading a little bit, it just gives a view of like either some of us don't want to go, right? Like there is no interest, or I don't know, I just don't, I don't see, that's the part I don't like.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to come to, in the short amount of time. I think we need to talk this through a little bit more, not, dismissing the idea in any way. So, I mean, seriously, so let's talk about it a little bit more, but I don't know if we want to talk about it tonight. Ms. Councilmember?
So, I guess I'm just trying to think about it really operationally speaking. Like, we have limited time. We have already quite a robust agenda and calendar schedule. And I think one of the things that we do well as a council is that because we are all at-large members, we are all going to lots of different events and communicating with residents, and so it's not just the meetings that we do. We're in the community, and so we have to figure out a way to balance those out. And so I have really appreciated when certain council members are able to lean in a lot more on certain areas that either one, I might not have the background or expertise in because I'm newer on council, or that's just not my area of expertise. Or two, I might want to lean in someplace more to get as much information as possible. So I think we have to figure out a way to balance still coming together, which I think we will continue to do with all of the work sessions, but how do we get all of that good information so that when we do come to the work session and talk together as a collective to make decisions, that we have all of the information available to have a really fruitful conversation. And there's got to be work done to be able to do that. And so in order to do that, there's got to be people working on it, and then we have to identify that in advance, or we're just, it won't be as focused as we want to be. So I don't think this process of setting up smaller work teams takes away from really robust conversations that we need to have in work sessions. It's just a way to figure out how to get the additional research, communication that needs to happen in order to make those decisions in advance so that we can have a great discussion.
The planning, the preparation.
Councilmember Fritz.
Yeah, I think that it's important, to Councilmember McKinney's point, there are people who have interests in different topics, and that's not to say that, that's not to malign any member of council that some people have strengths and want to focus on specific issue areas. And I think it's actually more transparent to the public, for the public to know who is starting these conversations on these initiatives and where are those initial conversations starting. So having a designated work group, that means residents can then engage those specific members specifically rather than the council generally. I think I'm hearing kind of two separate issues of should we have these groups and then who should be on the groups. And I think that's the secondary question, is a question of equity. And I think there's ways to ensure that there's equitable representation on these and that there's opportunities for everyone to participate. And I don't think that any of these meetings would be closed to any council member. I don't think you could do that, but
We would have to have fewer than 4.
well, you would have to advertise if 4 were in attendance, yes.
Well, so that means that we need to know ahead of time if there's going to be 4 or more.
Right. Mr. Summerone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the issues that's coming up is it's a workload issue. And I think that's where I say we, council and the city manager struggle, that we want to get a lot of things done. And we all know that everything can be done, at least to the level that we want to do, but we still are relentless trying to get everything done. And we can't do everything. So I think we have to be realistic about what are the things that we want to get done and focused on what are the most important things to get done. Because I've been here 2.5 years, and there's a lot of things that council wants to jump right in and do, and then there's a new fire that comes up, a new thing that comes up, and we jump in on the next thing. And so I think one of the things we struggle with is the workload and meeting all demands and prioritizing. One of the challenges I have in the next month is I'm speaking with the team about what are we going to do with with the city manager's pillars, and what does our work plan look like, because our pillars are being replaced by council's pillar, and we have to reorganize our internal work. Those are some of the internal performance things that we have to organize internally. I think the council would benefit from revisiting what are the goals that we outline in the pillars and focused areas, and prioritizing which of these things are actionable and what time frame. And I think that can lead the conversation, okay, on what are we going to focus on. For the budget piece, for me, the issues are that the deficit is becoming more difficult and challenging to close. So the question that I have for council is, are we raising taxes? And if so, which method do you want to go about raising taxes? And what are they going to fund? If we're not going to raise taxes, then what services are we going to cut? And how are you going to prioritize and decide what services to cut?
This is the point of the working group, is to have these conversations, so everything's laid out. And then we can come here, and it's like, okay, we could do this, 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 this. We could do this, 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 this. And then we all decide together, like, what is the path that we want to take? It's not about excluding anyone from the conversation. It's about making sure that we're ready to have the best conversation. But, I mean, I know to Ms. Pope's point, I think that there has historically been not a lot of information sharing about meetings on council. I'm trying to be better about that. Like when I went to the, the standpipe meeting a few weeks ago, I sent everyone a little mini report on that. So I myself am trying to be better about that, but I do think there is maybe that was historically an issue, and I think some of us are trying to do a little better about that, though, because I do recognize that not everyone can attend all the meetings, particularly the ones during the day, which are not always at council's discretion or the city manager's discretion, right? Sometimes we're meeting when our stakeholders want to meet, But yeah, I do understand and think that we can do better at reporting out on those things and making sure that all of council is aware of what's happening in those meetings.
Councilmember Weaver.
Yeah, well, and I have some notes about the meeting from yesterday that I didn't get written up because I ended up at the Greenbelt Middle School promotion instead of the other things I had planned for the evening. So I do have those written down, Ms. Pope, and I plan to write those up and send to council. I just didn't have time to do it yesterday because I didn't get home.
No rush. Don't let me rush you. That's not my intent. My intent was not that. My intent was that we get briefed by our city manager on important issues, especially when it has to do with budget. So. And I'm not all in favor of these little groups. And I've said that from the very beginning, but I'm not going to say it again because it's like I can say it another 10 times and try and explain it, and we can dance around the issue. And so I'm done. I'm done talking about it.
No, I think we should talk about this a little bit more, but not to me. There's some information items. And the next time that we'll be coming together formally will be 22nd, I guess. Is that a meeting or is that a work session?
It's a regular
meeting. As I said initially, I just think we need to, with these groups, we need to kind of define things just a little bit better. Or is it standing? Is it temporary? Is the membership fixed? I think maybe with some, if we're going to do this with some committees, it might be a good idea to intentionally rotate, so we all have to serve on a finance committee or this committee or that committee, and just rotate on a regular basis. So, but at this time, is it council's will to continue talking, or shall we go to information items?
We should hear the public comment. And then
Okay,
we can...
okay, Mr. Owens, please.
Anyone who would recognize or be curious about the disdain I have for council should look at these meetings. Council is elected at large. For many, many years, it's been suggested it should not be. When it was elected at large and we had 2 members living in Greenbrier, only one of them would have been elected to council. Currently, we have 2 members living in Greenbelt Station. If we were not elected at large, only one of them would be serving on council. Council was expanded many years ago from 5 to 7. I thought that was inappropriate and unnecessary, and we don't need 7 members of council. But having 7 members on council, it's not so large that it requires subcommittees. Council has a regular meeting, theoretically twice a month, and work sessions theoretically 4 times a month. Council should be prepared when it comes to work sessions and meetings, in advance be prepared to discuss what's on the agenda for these activities and not need to meet separately as a group or as a group with the city manager or other representatives of Greenbelt's senior management teams. The most galling element of this is that if you convene special committees, which you've already determined to do, whether only one has been formally approved of or not, you're allowing that, in some instances, 3 members of council may be meeting with the city manager or other senior department management team members, and that's not a public meeting. Everything that council does with regard to the public's business with the city manager and any of the other senior management team folks should be done in these meetings, not outside these meetings, in these meetings, so that the public either can come and whine like I'm doing, or at least have the opportunity to view it online and maybe participate in that way. But none of us will have that opportunity when council chooses to meet with the city manager and other folks effectively, privately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, let's go ahead and move to information items. Mr. Summerone, you had forwarded 2 items initially earlier today. Do you want to briefly give us a quick update?
Sure, Mayor. The 2 items are, one, that we have the date for the 4 cities meeting that's been proposed by Bergman Heights for July 23rd. It does fall on the council recess, and we need to respond to the host city whether the date is acceptable or if we want to propose a different date.
I'd like to propose a different date. I'm not sure which one, but I've heard, I think that there is going to be, I got an email this afternoon about a county activity that might be taking place from 6 to 8 on the 23rd. And I don't know about everybody else, whether or not you would want to. What is council's will just in regard to having a 4 cities meeting in mid-July?
I'll be out of town on the 23rd, so I wouldn't be there if that's the date chosen.
I will also be out of town.
I mean, we're on recess, so I think that it's fair for us to say that many of us will be out of town, so.
Okay.
Do you have a,
I'm going to be in town, but I think that date is not a good date. It's usually the 3rd Thursday,
I think that's 4th.
and that's the 4th Thursday, so.
It's a 5 Thursday.
oh, that's right.
Okay.
Yep, we've had it on the 4th, but it's technically the 3rd.
So, Member Niesel, do you think you're going to be around, maybe?
I'll be the sole representative of
No,
Greenbelt.
I'll be around probably, but not on the 23rd. I think something's coming up on the 23rd.
Would you like to propose another date? So, August 6th, or I think the week prior might be the 16th. I don't know how.
This,
The 16th would work better for me.
Yeah, so the 9th or the 16th of July or the 6th of August?
I think the 16th, will PGCMA be meeting during the summer? They often skip July, right?
I don't think they do meet in the summer.
I think the 16th might be a better date to propose if that were, like, to move it, and that is the 3rd Thursday. Other thoughts on that?
No.
16th? Okay, yeah, if we can propose that and see what they say.
We will send that date, July 16th, as a preference.
Let them know that we're on recess, and
Right.
that's kind of why we're trying to.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure, do that.
And what was the second item?
The second item is, I expect to receive the recodification of the city code within the next 30 days. I think you're all aware that there are some policy changes that need to be made to the code, and we will be accepting a code that will be outdated by the time you accept it. And the proposal was to move forward and work through the code expeditiously as possible and as time allowed. So the question before you is, would you like to schedule an additional work session to go over the draft of the recodification code that would be proposed for adoption by council, or should we take it straight to introduction before in a council meeting?
I think it depends. So you said there's some policy decisions that need to be made, and personally, I don't have the best sense of how extensive the modifications are. So
That would need to be done or that are being done? So,
Post.
yeah, so the first draft is just to bring the city code into legal compliance. That's the first step. Remember, we presented the draft code, and the first step was, there were a couple things council asked us to do. One is remove the gender references and legal compliance. So we're gonna do that. There have been additional things that we know that are just plainly outdated that we just don't do.
Well, that's the charter.
That's the charter. That's something for you all to address.
Yeah.
But the code requires registration of bicycles and a $25 registration fee. Just not enforceable. We're not doing that.
We're balancing the budget.
Well, I don't know.
We're gonna chase down all the bikes.
A lot of bikes, we could probably close the budget. Yeah. No, it's not enforceable. It's, yeah.
Not do it. If
not
we
a
can't
best
enforce it,
practice.
let's not do it, because
Right.
that's silly.
Right. There are a few other things similar to that, like our city code currently requires parking permits at Buddy Attic.
Let's not do that.
Right, but there was a reason behind it. I think that, I don't want to speak for Jay Davis and Mayor Jordan, who were here when that went in effect, but we're not doing that now, and there's really no reason to include it. So you'll see some changes like that. There are others that we can make changes to, but I believe that they are policy items that council needs to decide on. For example, rentals at Buddy Attic Lake for non-residents are not allowed. That's council, for whatever reason, decided it did not want to allow rentals at Buddy Attic to non-residents.
Right.
That is, I recognize the issue there, but we're not touching that. That's an issue for council to deliberate and make a decision on. So we're not making those changes. You'll see that in the code, but that's something that you're gonna see and you're gonna wonder or ask yourself why.
Okay, so we've gotten the update. Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Pope, or can we take that, note of that, and then, make a determination about scheduling, or do you have a specific date that you want to squeeze that in on?
As you can see from the calendar, there are limited work sessions coming up. And the reason I ask is because we have, at your direction, Mayor, we've sent out the request for BARC, Greenbelt National Park, the WMATA real estate team, and who else are we sent out invitations to?
SHA.
SHA.
Yeah.
So we sent those out, and whenever they come in, they're just gonna go in the schedule with the next availability.
Those were all on that to be scheduled.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to make
Yeah,
sure that
yeah,
if you
yeah.
want that work session, we're all eager to adopt a new code, right? So that it's on the website, it's searchable by you and the public. I think it's long overdue.
I think, given that there are probably substantial changes that we need to make, I think we maybe should accept the code, the recodification as it is, so that we can get it up on the website in the better searchable form. And then maybe as part of that, if there are already things that are identified as we need to address and update, if that can be sort of included as a list of, we know these are things that we need to update. But I guess it seems to me, especially given, so if it's going to be ready in the next month, then would you think that it would be able to be on the July 13th meeting for acceptance if we don't try to work through the changes?
July 13th?
July 13th. So I'm expecting it in the next 30 days. So that'll be July, first week of July. We should have it then.
Okay, because I guess it seems to me that if we accept it, even though we know there are things that need to be changed, if we accept it, then we can at least get it up on the website in the much better format that makes it easier to then go through and talk about those changes. So even though it seems a little bit weird to accept it, knowing that there are some things like, bike registration fees that we want to change,
Take that off. That's,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
okay, that's already.
Okay, would there be any legal implications to doing that, to putting up code that we know there are some elements that need to be changed?
Yes, there are some things that will be codifying that we know are not enforceable, but that's no different than where we are now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, I'm okay. Ms. Pope?
Maybe we can just take, give us a list of the things that's up to us that we need to decide.
Be helpful.
All of it is up to you to decide.
Well, like the little things like the bike registration and stuff, I mean, I think we're all in the same,
Of things that you've identified that
That
really
the al-
council should make a change on.
just the bigger, like,
We'll work with the team. So the buddy addict,
Yeah, like things like that.
Issues,
That-
yes.
Yeah, just to say that this is what it is now. It's something that staff thinks city council should reconsider.
Okay.
and then all
okay.
the other little things, the things that
Yeah.
make sense, that's
Okay.
up to you then.
Mayor Pro Tem, and I got a couple of quick ones, but Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, mine was related to the Banner City recognition at the closing session at MML. We need to identify the person who's going to go up on stage and get the little plate that goes on our plaque. I have submitted I submitted the form, I've done that the last years, but I wanted to open it up to others, especially some of the newer council members, if anyone would like to be the one who goes up and gets the little plate to put on the plaque.
Well, it
If
was-
nobody else
well,
wants
it-
to,
it
then
should-
I'm
it should
happy
be-
to do it.
It should be you because you put in all the work.
Well,
So
I-
that's, I mean, that would be my input on that one.
Would anybody prefer to do that? Well, Kristen?
Okay, if not,
Why don't we usually all get on a picture?
okay.
We can all come for the picture.
Yeah, no, there's a picture afterwards. It's just they need one person to go to accept the little plate.
okay.
And then I have to go to they usually have like a lineup practice ahead of time and something like that.
That practice, it's
very
no
important,
small,
that
it's
practice.
challenging. Hey, a couple things. So MML, is everybody going to MML? Is everybody going? Is everyone leaving on Sunday or Wednesday? And you said the two of you are leaving early, or you're looking for
No, my
rides?
husband is leaving early with the car. I need a ride back after my husband leaves me in Ocean City without a car. By agreement.
Related to MML? Okay. Just two other things. One, I just want to make sure, Congressman Hoyer has this big event on Friday, and it's his bull roast, and it's his last one. It's this big deal. If you want, I can forward a link. It's out at the Newton White Mansion. It's from 5 to 8. But it's a very large event, and you might enjoy that. And finally, tomorrow's the first day of early voting. So the boxes, anybody, Frankie, where are
The closest box is Berwyn Heights.
Berwyn
Oh,
Heights?
sorry.
Okay, Trinity Church, they have one at Trinity Church. Yeah. Yeah, this is the only one in the city of Greenbelt. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, well, if there's no further questions or comments.
I have one more,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just to disclosure, we don't need to discuss it. County Council is hosting a press conference in response to today's lawsuit from the Park and Planning. The reason I bring it up is because we have several projects on that list that would make its way into the discussion about that funding. So that press conference is tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and we've been invited directly to attend.
I'm sorry, can you explicate like what side of the ledger we'd be benefiting on? Like I forget.
I mean, I'm not willing to go to that
No,
because
that's what I'm trying to understand. Like we're
we
being
thought that they
impacted
gave us
because
that
of the-
money in good faith, and if they didn't,
Well, we don't, so you're just daylighting it. Councilman Fritz, you have something?
Well, I
more to
just,
say?
could you clarify, just for the millions watching at home and myself, we're impacted because of the actions taken by council, or we're impacted by the, like, if the lawsuit were to succeed, like,
It's not clear to me the impact, because the activities that we submitted funding for fall squarely within the eligible uses of park and planning dollars, and that is the enhancements to Shrum Hill fields for the lights, the Buddy Attic Park maintenance. Our park is used by a lot of folks, not just Greenbelters, but the regional area, and the preservation of the Greenbelt Museum. So all eligible. Oh, and the indoor pool recoding, which is a recreational activity. So they will all, so they will all be eligible activities under the project charges of park and planning. In the past, we have received, for the last 10 years, we have received funding from that pool. But the funding that we have received has been $260,000, and that specifically funds swimming programs at the Aquatic and Fitness Center and senior services at the community center. So we did not get that funding renewed, but we did get new funding renewed that would fall under that project. So
Unfortunately, I'm not available. I don't, is anybody from council available to attend 10 o'clock? Okay.
I'm just sharing
Okay.
the information.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and close things out. Thank you so much.